跟行动派的同事沟通，有时一定会碰到壁，但到底要注意什么呢？ Things to avoid when talking to drivers. Hello, 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast. I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the best style. I mean, my style. Yeah.
Well, that just tells you everything about drivers.
All jokes aside, today we want to get into drivers and what to do and how to prepare to go talk to a driver. Now, if you need an overview of the driver style itself, you can go back to episode 228, where we talk about the driver as a whole. Today, we want to get into what are the key factors or what are the key things that you need to think about and prepare yourself for in order to go have better communication with a driver.
那我们在之前的 EPI episode 我们已经讲过了 driver 他们的管理学，所以在今天的单元呢，我们特别想要来讲一些就是当我们在跟 drivers 做沟通的时候，不管是同事、你的下属或者是你家人、朋友也好，当你在提供给他们一些 information， 在跟他们沟通的时候，有哪一些是应该要 avoid， 还有哪一些你是必须要好好的先心理准备，还有一些是 information 要如何去做准备。
So, if you go back to our discussion on dimensions, drivers are high on assertiveness, low on responsiveness. High on assertiveness meaning that when it comes to communication, when it comes to influence, they are more tell-oriented. When it comes to responsiveness, they are low on responsiveness, which means they are more controlling of their emotions, less likely to show them, and tend to pride themselves on logic. And so, as Sherry covered these takeaways, it's really important to remember that a lot of these traits that we covered in like Expressive, who is also high in assertiveness, about making decisions quickly, telling people, not asking, is related to also how you think about preparing to talk to a driver, which means they like the important information first.
Yeah.
But unlike in Expressive, they want the facts. Not all the facts. They just want the facts that help them make that fast decision and to make them feel that they can move forward. Momentum.
那我觉得这边有一个很重要的 key takeaway， 也就是 drivers 他们的脑子里面都有一个非常明显跟一个清楚的 timeline 跟它的逻辑。 So they are very, very logical and they all have steps to do things. 这个完成之后才能够再讲到第二件事情。所以但是有的时候啊，他们这些所谓的 steps 跟他们的 logic 并不是非常清楚的 communicate 到给所有人，或者甚至你可能不觉得，就其他 style 的人会觉得我也不太需要去问这一部分的问题，就是 you don't think there should be a logic about this or there is a timeline for this, but for drivers they have very clear idea what that is like. Even for like personal life, for any kind of situation, I think that's just how they think. 所以当你在提供给他 information 的时候，我觉得身为一个 expressive, what I've learned is that patience, and patience is the key， 因为通常 expressive 的人真的是比较急。其实说起来 drivers 跟 expressive 通常是稍微会比较急一点点，但是 expressive 的人会很急的想要把所有自己觉得很重要的事情讲出来，但是我觉得重要的事情对于 drivers 来讲可能并不是全部一次都很重要，可能是10件事情当中只有3件是现在重要的，其他3件可能是下一个月才重要，接下来可能是在几个月才重要，所以他们有个很清楚的 timeline。 所以我们在 present 的时候呢，其实先询问一下你们大概的这个逻辑 timeline， what is it like， 然后我们再去 prepare， 就是我们现阶段要提供什么 information。 So that usually at least helps me to become more patient about how I wanted to communicate things, how I wanted to present things, so I don't feel like, oh, I just give you all these key information, but you're not taking everything. You're just taking one thing, and why is that?
I want to go back and highlight something that I think is really critical from what you just talked about, is there's a distinction between wanting to make decisions fast between an expressive and wanting to make a decision fast for a driver. And this is where a lot of miscommunication happens, because both of these styles, they appreciate speed, they appreciate making decisions quickly, they appreciate movement forward. But the primary motivation behind it is very different, and it may cause a lot of these miscommunications. In the case of an expressive, the need to move quickly is actually the need to get information out or react to something that they feel. Again, that intuition, that gut feeling is really important to an expressive. And if it hits them, whether it's the inspiration, whether it's the passion, or whether they get information that affects how they feel, they want to take action on it immediately. When they're in a hurry, it's based around how they're feeling about information, how they're reacting to information. For a driver, their hurry or their quick and decision making is, how do I move forward, right? And how quickly can we move forward? I'm not waiting to process new information unless that information can very quickly tell me what to do. It's not a feeling of I need to react to it. It's a, how does this affect my priority list? So what do I do next? That's a very different type of decision making with the same outward appearance. The outward appearance is, we got to get this done now. But the where it's coming from is totally different.
Right. That is something that sometimes, in the very beginning when we started working together, we're all like, oh, let's have a goal. Let's get ready, execute, get to the goal. 但是有的时候会发现，我要开始啦，我有点急，但是为什么 Nick 就觉得not now 就觉得他很像在那边是一个那种很沉稳的一个人，在那边跟你讲 not now， 然后你也不知道为什么 why not now? Why? Give me reason.
Yeah, exactly.
But usually at this point, if you really want a reasons, it's really not the best time to ask for a reason, to be honest. You should just give space.
Here's what answers the later point that you made earlier, which is, when it comes to timing or when it comes to prioritization, that word, priority, is what matters the most to a driver. For an expressive or an analytical, let's say, everything is a priority.
Yeah.
For an analytical, all information is a priority, so I cannot make quick decisions because I haven't weighed everything. For an expressive is all new information that may change how they feel or may give new inspiration is a priority. So there's not a very strong filter of, where does this fall in my priority? It's, how does this affect my intuition? How does this affect my feeling? For a driver, any new piece of information, or when people are giving you information, it's about prioritization. It may not be that I don't care about that information, but I may not think it changes my priorities at all, right? So like you said, you may early on, it would just be like, let's do this. I think we can sit down and film it right now. But then my thought process would still be, well, that's not going to matter for a few weeks. Why am I jumping on that? There are other things on my to-do list or other things I think are a higher priority that, even though this new piece of information is good, it's important, but it did not change my priority.
Right. So then again, I do think it's really critical to ask the driver, what's your priority list or what does it look like? 其实我觉得在做很多沟通之前，先了解对方他的一个思绪跟他的一个 framework。所以对于其他的 style 来讲呢，你就比较好做一些心理的准备。我觉得如果当我有问这个问题，说我比较了解的时候，我也不会那么的急，或者我也不会觉得说，这个都是带给我很好的心情，所以我们一定要来做。You know, 我会比较知道什么时候要 calm down， 或者什么时候要慢下来 and kind of match the driver's priority list. So, 我觉得在这个部分不只是我们在做心理准备，还有在做我们一些 information 的一些分配来讲，我觉得也是非常重要。
This all gets tied together when we've talked about over and over again that drivers like, what are the key facts? What are the key ideas? But one extra layer on that is not just what are the key facts? Like, oh, here are the 3 things you need to know. You actually have to consider those 3 things in terms of priority. Like, if you're telling me these 3 things, but these 3 things are not important for another 3 months, really just don't have the time to process it. I need to know what we need to do now, and I need enough information to make a decision about what needs to be done today. Now, that's not to be mistaken that drivers don't have a longer-term vision. In fact, part of the logic is that drivers have a very long-term strategic vision. But as Sherry said, that's not always something they talk about because it's not their priority to be like, here is our 5-year vision. Here's how everything in their head, they're like, okay, I have a 5-year vision. So now what do I need to deal with today? So when someone is bringing you information that you compartmentalize as like, oh, that'll be really useful next year, but I don't want to talk about that right now. And then we'll file it away in that, oh, next year, these will be really important to talk about. But today, what do you want to do?
Exactly. So I think for drivers, 你们都有一个 roadmap. 但是这个 roadmap 有的时候其实你们也不是很想要讲 because it's not necessary. 你觉得没有必要，我干嘛要跟其他人讲？但是这个 roadmap 会影响到你们的逻辑跟这些 timeline. Personal life, career-wise, I think everything you have a roadmap. 但我觉得这边就是蛮有趣的是，如果你要真的跟 drivers 要相处，同事也好，朋友也好 you have to trust the process. 因为他们是真的有个 roadmap. 他的 roadmap是很逻辑性的，但是有的时候他们并不会想要直接的跟你去分享 then that's okay. Trust the process.
Back to how do you handle communication itself? The primary thing you need to think about, whether it's presenting, emailing, any type of communication with a driver, is you need to give them the context, you need to give them the gist, and you need to give them the key takeaways. But in all of that, you need to think about what is the priority in all this. Sherry can probably attest to this. The question that I ask the most often to her is probably, and then?
And then 什么东西
Yeah.
Yeah, 然后嘞
Right? Because a lot of people will just come and be like, okay, here's everything I want to do, or here's all the things I've thought about. And then it's not that I would discount, oh, okay, this is all nonsense. Actually, a lot of it I'll think is very important, but then everything that gets said, I'm starting to file away into that roadmap. But what I really want to know is like, this is all great. So what now?
Exactly. Or another question that you would say is, what do you think you wanted to get out of this particular task, right? That's another question that you would ask me. It's like, you wanted to know where that fit into your roadmap.
And this is not just a question for the driver asking for his own purposes, but it's also back to the logic of that's always the discussion I have with startups or discussions I have with team members where they'll come and they'll have this really great idea, but then I want them to think about, but what's the end game for that? Where does that fit into your own roadmap? Like that may be very exciting, or that might be a really interesting opportunity. I think startups get stuck with this all the time. It's like this really interesting opportunity comes, but they have not considered what does that do to all their other priorities. Maybe this person has come and they've given me this opportunity and they're like, should I go do it? But then my question is, let's say it's very successful. how did that fit into anything else you're doing? You need to think back to your own personal roadmap. What does it matter? Like it could go very well. Like what's the best outcome or what is the upside if it's perfect? Does that affect anything you do? If it does, even if it's imperfect, then yeah, you should probably do it. But even if it's like the most perfect outcome, but the upside doesn't change anything you're doing, then you probably don't need to do it. But that's back to my own logic. And that's how, when you're talking to a driver, that's how they've already thought about things. They have a roadmap in their head. When you're presenting something, they're filing it away in that roadmap. But if it doesn't seem very clear what you're going to do next, then of course you're going to get the question like, and then? Now, to be fair, there are a lot of downfalls to that, which means in terms of patience of a driver to listen to your plan, there's not a lot. So if you cannot speak in terms of key ideas, you cannot speak in terms of priorities, you may have all the right things. But depending on who you're talking to, they may not have the patience to listen long enough to get it. So this is why it's really one of those things that prepping for talking to a driver is really important. If you want to just go sit down with a style and brainstorm, driver is not that person. Expressive, amiable. They will sit down, they will converse with you, they will let you bounce ideas. If you want help making decisions, then you go sit down and talk to a driver, but you need to be a bit clearer or articulate where you're getting stuck.
Yeah. 而且很重要的是啊，当你开始 dump 所有的 information 给 driver 的时候， driver 他马上就会看起来就是很烦。然后 expressive 跟 amiable 又很不喜欢看到人家，诶，这个 energy 在 shift. Oh no. And we start to criticize ourselves. So the vicious cycle begins.
And then it's worse because they're criticizing themselves, second guessing what they're saying, and the driver's like, oh my God, why didn't you think about this before you showed up? That's not always the amiable or expressive's fault. Sometimes people just need a sounding board. Sometimes they need a safe space to brainstorm. But that's something a driver needs to learn, is that patience. So back to, and I've given this example a few times, my training as a facilitator or playing with coaching a little bit, it has forced me to shift. That's not a natural tendency to ask a lot of questions, to not talk in the beginning of a meeting. That's something that if you find yourself as a driver needing help with, you should go find ways to train yourself to do what they call compassionate listening, or very focused ability to listen to the whole picture. Well, we hope that this has given you a few more insights into, if you're preparing to go talk to a driver, what are the considerations you need to have beyond the basics of key information, but actually thinking about terms of priority and trying to understand a driver's mental roadmap. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.